Greetings, friendos. Reformed Stoic here, back with another video. So, what I wanted to talk about this time, something a little bit different. Actually, big throwback to a video that I believe it was on my original channel about the fear versus love dichotomy. I made kind of a cringe, outdated video back then that I thought strength versus fear was better because I was uncomfortable with love. And I think I've covered love in other videos before. There's a lot of Christians that break it down, how the love spoken of in the Bible, God is love. You show your love for me by your love for one another. There's a lot of talk about love in the Bible, like it's one of the highest things, but what you need to account for is translating from Greek into English. And the idea is that there are a couple of words, it was either 2 or 3 different words for love. I know that one of them is eros, and I don't really remember. I think that's the romantic love. In America, in the modern Western world, English-speaking people, we tend to think romance when we hear love. And we know about love being more of like a deep caring for someone type of a thing. But I believe it's really a result of Hollywood and culture that love always comes down to, like that moment when you first tell a girl that you're dating that you love her. Unrelated, by the way, I think the girl should be the first one to say it. The girl should be the first one to say it, boys. We don't need to be dropping I love you bombs before a girl says it. That's kind of beta. But anyway, it's not that deep, There's different words that were all translated to love in English, and the love that Christ is speaking of, and when they're saying that God is love, it's the kind of love that I'm referring to in this video that is very much so the opposite of fear. And it has taken me a long time to understand how love is in fact the opposite of fear. And unfortunately, I think that most people live their lives in fear. And the people who live their lives in love, they're most certainly able to, or at least have the best chance to follow Christ's instructions when he said, always be rejoicing. You put your faith in God. Part of what it means to put your faith in God is that God will take care of you. Even if things are hard, even if there's a struggle, everything will eventually be okay by God's hands. That's what it means to put your faith in God. And because you have faith that God will look out for you, you should always be rejoicing. Now, ultimately, in my personal life, I think there were times where I was pretty in it, so to speak. The beginning of 2024, I made the most progress I've ever made with NoFap. I'm sorry that topic had to come up in this video, but that wasn't the only progress I made. I was making progress. I was feeling okay with who I was and spending my time primarily alone. And I just bring that up because I lost a little bit of that momentum when I moved. But it's slowly starting to come back after a couple of setbacks. And the idea, guys, is that, first of all, because it seems like love is somewhat hard to explain. I mean, when you say that God is love, well, God is the Most High. So if God is love, I guess if you could define love, then you could define God, right? I mean, that's just some straight up logic right there. If God is love, then by defining love, you define God. And I don't think it's quite as simple as that. But let's just say the undefinable love that I have maybe an idea of, maybe that I have a glimpse of, similar to how God is incomprehensible, but we have ideas of what God is. It starts by eradicating fear. It starts by getting rid of being afraid. You just need to have faith that everything's going to work out. And when it comes to things like the black pill and manosphere and rage bait, rage fuel, politics, so many of these things, you guys, it's just got you angry, upset, worried. I'm pretty sure I've dropped this on my channel a few times now, but it's so relevant. And I think it's pretty easy for me to say that Yoda is my favorite part of Star Wars. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hatred. And hatred is the quickest path to the dark side. I need to double check that one. I'm getting rusty. I dropped that quote a lot because it's deep. I mean, Star Wars has a very deep, wide, loyal fan base. And Yoda's philosophy and, you know, their kind of religion of the Jedi and the Force, it's good stuff. There's definitely some wisdom in there. But what Yoda says is that it all starts with fear. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hatred. And hatred is the fastest path to the dark side. I mean, it's true. It is most certainly true. It is 100% in line with Christianity. And it's why the Bible tells you to just love everybody. Now, that makes people cringe when it's like, love everybody, love your enemies. Bleh. Like, that makes people cringe. It is what the Bible says. But not that I could ever correct the Bible. But, you know, it's not something that was written in English. So I think sometimes the translation has just not lost the meaning necessarily, but some of the impact of maybe reading it in a different language. And it's just that if you're uncomfortable with the idea of you should love everyone, then make it shorter. You should just love. You should be living in love. And it might sound cheesy, and it's hard to explain, but fear is this anxiety. Fear is dwelling on the negative. And can you, like, well, I don't think I'm afraid. I'm angry, but you fear for a lack. When it comes to things like, oh, women are doing this and this and this on social media and dating apps, it brings up this fear in you of a lack. You're going to lose your ability to have success with women because of the modern state of the world. And it's not that these things aren't true, you guys. It's not about like, oh, we're all wrong about what we believe. It's that if you want to develop as a person, if you want to deepen spiritually, if you want to become attractive. Now, there's another word that means something to people, you know, it's like, oh, attractive. Well, I'll never be attractive, but it's like a magnet. It's like how a magnet just pulls things toward it. When you live in love, when you are able to just exude positivity, when you are able to just be content with who you are You're able to be kind to people. You're able to be genuine. You're able to have a short interaction with the person at the checkout counter. You're able to make small talk at the gym. And it's not just because you want something from somebody. It's not like, oh, I'm going to make small talk with this girl so I can get into her pants. It's like you become that person who's just, hey, how's it going? And you try to make it genuine, and maybe you just have to start somewhere. But you get to a point where it's like, especially if like you're somebody who's nervous and shy, and I've been there and I'm still kind of there. But if you're somebody who's struggled to make relationships and thrive in like a group setting, and this kind of comes from Brent Smith a little bit, what I'm about to say, that stop thinking about what you can get from people and be more about what you can give. You know, like when you can provide good conversation, when you're providing people with just like making them feel better about themselves, like, wow, that guy kind of like lifted my mood a little bit, that guy kind of lifted my spirits a little bit. And it does kind of segue into how you can do better with women. I almost thought about, but it's not the time for me to make a video giving advice on women, because obviously that's whatever. It's just, but it relates to that too, because it's not something that could fill up an entire video. But what I wanted to say is, what you're trying to do, if you're going to try to make a cold approach work with a woman, it needs to seem genuine. And for the most part, if a girl is completely closed off and she just looks like she's like avoiding eye contact with you, and she has headphones on, or she's just, then there's maybe not even a way to do it. Like forcing someone's attention when they're trying to avoid you, like that person is ultimately just kind of closed off to talking to you, or maybe anybody sometimes. But if you cross paths with a girl and your eyes kind of meet and you're just kind of like in each other's zone, you're trying to make it seem like you're just talking on a whim. Like, oh, like, do you work there? Like, you know, that they're wearing like a sweater for something, or maybe make a comment on their shirt. Like if it's a band, I'm kind of like at a loss for words for examples, but, and this kind of comes from being witty, and this is some of that stuff that makes a game about more than just how you look. It's like you're using your wit to just kind of observe this person, and from some sort of a detail about them, you're able to spark a genuine discussion. And all the while this discussion is happening, your body language shows that you're just enjoying this little reaction. Maybe you like them, maybe you don't. Attractive women usually know that they're attractive. But when you're just able to, and it doesn't have to be rocket science, it could just be like say it's a girl at the gym. It's like, oh, were you here yesterday? It's like, yeah, I was here yesterday. It's like, oh, wow, 2 days in a row. Good for you. Little things like that. Little things like that. And your body language is what is going to allow the conversation to continue. If it's meant to continue in that moment, maybe you'll see that person later, and then you can just have a little bit more banter. But I don't want this to go into like my cringy PUA advice. It's just, that is kind of coming from a place of love. Like, you have to like people. You have to try to understand the human condition. Everybody here has been in that place where it's like, wow, people suck. People are worse than they've ever been. But there's also a lot of people out there saying that, and they want things to change, and they want things to be different. And you got to kind of use another cliche of, you got to be the change that you want to see in the world. And the lovers are the change in a world of fear. People are afraid. People are afraid to talk. People are afraid to get rejected. People are afraid to get attacked. People are afraid to get stalked. People are afraid to get slandered. And These are all really plausible things that can happen to people, and it's a scary world out there. I've been through some crazy shit myself, but everyone is like a diamond in the rough. And this channel, Spiritual Renaissance, he has a few other channels as well, like Beyond the Alchemy, I believe, is his channel on like NoFap and retention. But his Spiritual Renaissance is just like his general, what he considers advanced spiritual commentary. I really like his example of spiritual alchemy. You hear a lot of people talking about spiritual alchemy, seen as kind of like an occult thing. But the way he describes it is it's something that happens on its own, and it happens through grace. He talks about grace, and God's grace, for those who aren't familiar, it's just God making things happen in you, making things change in your life. You can almost say that spiritual alchemy is God's grace, but a little bit of it comes from you, and a lot of it, most of it, comes from God. But yeah, I really like the way that he talks about spiritual alchemy. It's something that just has to happen on its own. Like your being, your spiritual presence, everything about you is like this chemical reaction, and it's just working itself out. If you're watching like a chemistry experiment and there's bubbles and bursts and explosions, that is all part of the chemical reaction that is leading toward the final product. So the times when you were afraid, the times when you were shy, the times when you blew it, the times when you were a black pillar, the times when you lashed out, the times when you said things that people used against you, that was all a part of your process. And everybody's trying to think, how do I be better than this? How do I change? Some of that stuff just has to work itself out on its own, because it's a part of your spiritual alchemy that at the end of that path, if you want to try to speed up the process, it's a noble effort. It's definitely worthwhile to try. You need to be easygoing, present, and always rejoicing, like Christ said. Even though everything, like how the world is, how life is, how your life is, you have to be like a generator that vibrates positivity in a cold world, and people will come to you for warmth. People will be like, oh wow, this guy's like giving off this positive energy that other people aren't. Is it going to make the drop dead gorgeous Instagram 10 out of 10 model want you over Giga Chad? It could, but that's not why you do it. You do it because it's the way to be, because it's the best way to be. If somebody out there wants to kill you, you can't control that. If people out there want to ruin your life, you can't control that. Like, Stoicism could add a few things here. Stoics could add a couple of things to the table. Like, you don't stress out about things that you can't control. You don't use things out of your control as an excuse to not be happy, to not be loving. And once you are someone who is loving, it's like, well, you got love for everybody. Now, what about the people who are horrible to you? What about the people who are horrible in general? How do you love your enemies? It comes from an understanding of the human condition, okay? And then there's people like, oh, Christianity's so cucked. Like, what, you're supposed to get on your knees and let somebody chop your head off? No. I think Goku from Dragon Ball Z has the absolute perfect gold standard of how you do that. He doesn't want to fight. He tries to tell people he doesn't want to fight. He's so much stronger than them that usually, like, they're trying to hit him or something. He's like, oh, come on, man. Like, I don't want to have to max you out. We can do better than this. He shows mercy to Vegeta, and Vegeta becomes a powerful ally. Like, Dragon Ball Z is art. I haven't watched it in a long time. I'm not gonna act like, I watch it all the time or anything, but anytime I do, I enjoy it, and it's more just like the symbolism of the story and the lessons of the story and the characters and the relationships. But being merciful, obviously, blessed are the merciful. It's just a matter of understanding the human condition. I've said that. People are wicked to you because they suffered. You have to understand that a lot of people who became predators were once preyed upon in every sense of the word. I didn't mean it in, like that way. But, yeah, I mean, that is also another way that it's relevant. It's just hurt people. And if you're in Dragon Ball Z, maybe that's going to be the new in Minecraft. If you're in Dragon Ball Z, it's like, man, I wish I didn't have to do this, but like sometimes you just got to freaking Kamehameha somebody, bro. Like, he felt bad for Frieza. He tried to let Frieza go, and then Frieza, it was all like his legs were chopped off and stuff, and he's trying to Destructo Disc him. He's like, man, like, I tried to let you go, and it sucks that I have to do this, but, and then he chopped him in half with his own Destructo Disc, so. There's a lot of different tangents that I could spin off of this. We've already gone for 21 minutes. We're definitely wrapping it up, like the real wrapping it up, like right now. This isn't the kind of content that people want to see on my channel, but I don't care. I can't allow my channel to halt my spiritual progress anymore. And my channel's a lot more than that, and I've already made a lot of videos that it's advice that I stand behind. But people want to see me doing the bants. People want to see me, I have a unique kind of black pill content. And it is not black pilled. And my message has never really been lay down and rot and give up. I've been trying to give people advice to pull themselves out of situations. And then, obviously the narrative about me is like, oh, well, he's such a loser. And blah, but I'm not, and you're not, and there is hope. And it's very simple, you guys. Get right with God, as in no theology on a good enough level to where it's like, you can take the 7 deadly sins. I mean, what I always say is 7 sins, 8 beatitudes, Matthew 7. And then 10 commandments. 10 commandments, 7 sins, 8 beatitudes, Matthew 7. And Matthew 7 is the Sermon on the Mount, the Golden Rule, those kind of things. Pick the log out of your own eye before you pick the speck out of other people's eyes. That's kind of like judge lest not ye be judged, which is a part of it. And then it's also follow the straight and narrow path. The path to hell is wide, and not everybody who says to me, Lord, 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 will see the kingdom of heaven. That's a really controversial one. That's one of the verses that makes it difficult for salvation by faith alone. But as James says, book of James, faith without works is a dead faith, and this just creates just a never-ending back and forth between Protestants and Catholics that I don't necessarily think that Protestants don't have anything valuable to say about it, but they'll basically tell you you're going to hell for thinking you should have good works, when James says there is no faith without works. So it's a semantics battle that just kind of never ends. And I think Matthew 7 is basically talking about narcissists. It's talking about people who go to church and judge everybody, and they identify as a Christian, but they're constantly judging and gossiping, and they have no mercy socially. Like, so many people here who are maybe drawn to my channel, and me is like, I think I'm an empath. I think I have a particular set of skills where I have this perception where I don't like narcissism. I don't like mean, people. I don't like cruelty. I don't like cruel people. And I think on some level it comes from the law of God being printed on my heart. I'm far from perfect. I've been cruel to people. But I've tried to stop that cycle multiple times. And every now and then, I just kind of sit on my couch and fire up my stream when maybe I'm in a little bit of a bad mood. And it's not even that big of a deal. But I kind of go backwards a little bit. I take a few steps backwards, maybe make a couple of edgy jokes, a couple of like racial jokes or something. I think some people see what's going on, you know? It's not the worst thing in the world to have edgy humor, but it can get you in trouble. And it's not really who I am. It's what a lot of people want me to be. A lot of people want me to be that, not for nefarious reasons, because it's funny to be this kind of like Sam Hyde, edgy alt-right character. And then a lot of people want me to be that for nefarious reasons, because they want to be able to destroy my character and my reputation and paint me in this negative light. I know better, you guys. I know better, and I have to be better, and I need to portray myself in this higher way indefinitely, moving forward, because it's who I am, it's who I've been multiple times, and it's like, whoever you are in the moment, there's going to be people out there making the argument that that's who you are. So maybe you're Mr. Nice Guy when you're having a good day, and then you stub your toe, and then all of a sudden, you're upset. And then, you're on camera. It's like, oh, look at this. And then they're gonna take that clip of you in that moment when you stub your toe, and that's who you are forever. But we all know better than that, don't we, chuddies? It's not really rocket science, is it? And I think I got lost in a huge tangent where I never even finished my thought, where it's like, it's really simple. You put your faith in God. I got lost saying how you get right with God. And that was 7 sins, 8 beatitudes, 10 commandments, Matthew 7. We're not going over that again, because I never even finished my thought. That's getting right with God. That's how I think you get right with God. Whoa, my gosh, that scared me. Call back in just a minute, because we're almost done here. I'm going to wrap it up and make that call. That's how you get right with God, and then you put your faith in God, because God's more likely to come through for you if you're living the faith. Get right with God, put your faith in God, and then always be rejoicing, because everything's going to be okay. Because even if there's going to be hard times, you know that God will get you through it. And that understanding that everything's going to be okay because you believe in God and you have your faith in God, that's where the love comes from, and that's basically enlightenment. And I got to live there, boys. I discovered it a long time ago, and it's time to just stop dragging my feet. That's all I got for you guys. Live in love, baby. God bless.